Thank you, everybody. It's really a pleasure to be here again today. I'm going to be talking about the African perspective on integral studies. It's a lot of information that I have to synthesize in a small amount of time. So I'll try to go a little faster. Sometimes I'll slow down a little bit, but don't worry if you're not following me, because during the panel discussion, I'll be happy to address some of the things. But if there is something that I want you to remember that I'm going to be talking about, it's that I'll review briefly, the integral education from Aurobindo all the way to Ferrer through Wilber, and go quickly into the African perspective. So from the Aurobindo perspective, I'm going to talk about his 5 principles, which are, physical, vital, mental, psychic, and spiritual. And then I will move to Wilber, who mainly bases his model on 3 stages or levels: personal, personal, and transpersonal. And then I will quickly talk about Ferrer, who has a more participatory model. And then I will jump into the African that has basically 3, which is the body, the vital principles, and the spiritual principles. So it's pretty simple but complex. So, now let me briefly talk about the Aurobindonian integral model, which is basically based on 5 principal activities of the human being. Aurobindo talks about the first principle or principal activity of human being is physical education, which is based on 3 principal aspects. And the first aspect is how to control our body. So for the people who do yoga, that is a pretty familiar thing for them. They know what Aurobindo is talking about. The next one is developing a harmonious development of the body. So again, how to synchronize your body in the things that you do. And the third is how to correct any deformities that you have in your body. So I'm just going to go quicker. I can come back to that during the discussion. So the second one is vital education, which also is based on 2 principal aspects. So the first is about the development of sense organs. And here in the West, we know basically that we have 5 sense organs. Sight, hearing, smelling, touching, and tasting. But in other culture, you have like 7, where you have also like the mind and the intuition. And other culture even have like 12. So it really depends where you are looking at, the sense organs. So, and then the next one is how to control our character for a possible transformation. So that is what the vital education is considered. Then he moves quickly to the mental education, which also is based on 5 principal and consecutive phases, because they follow one follow the other. So the first one is basically about the concentration and the attention of the mental activity. And the second one is the expansion of our mental activity. And the third is how to organize our ideas, around a central idea, basically how to focus our mental activity and use that focus as a guiding principle in life. And then the fourth is thought control. How do you reject thoughts that we don't like, that are negative, and how do we only think what we like and when we want to think it? And then the fifth is the development of mental silence. It's all about how to quiet your mind, and as you quiet your mind, then you open yourself to receiving some inspiration for the higher stages of your being. So then he moves to the psychic education, where he talks about, at this point here, it's more about thinking questions like, what is the motive of our existence here? What is the purpose? Are we existing for the purpose of existing, or do we have a greater purpose to fulfill as we exist? So the thinking becomes a little complicated. And then the second one is how to experience immortality. Because when you move into the psychic realm, it's about contemplating immortal life, contemplating endless time, limitless space, and how to really expand in the cosmos. And then at this point, you try to kind of go beyond the ego, try to abolish your ego. So that's the whole thing that happened in the psychic education. And then he moves to the spiritual education, which is basically spiritual consciousness. Here you kind of begin to have the experience of living the infinite, the eternal, being able to project yourself beyond all creation, beyond time, beyond space. At this point, you don't have any ego anymore. So you kind of live in sync with with pure consciousness. So that is the ultimate stage. And I'll talk a little bit about that when we summarize this. So now we can understand a little bit where our famous CIS-7 commitments and ideals come from, and the practicing the good approach to learning and research, affirm spirituality, commit to diversity and inclusion, and so on and so forth. It's basically all over the building here that everybody can see. So it's actually inspired, from Aurobindo integral education, since that's what kind of laid the foundation of this school. So now I'm going to talk about Wilber, but as I was preparing this, I'm like, I know a little bit how the school feels about Wilber. So I was like, is it even appropriate for me to talk about Wilber? But I also realized that Wilber is a scholar, and he's done a lot for the advancement of transpersonal psychology and for the advancement of integral education. So I have to kind of give him some respect in this regard. So I decided to talk briefly about him, which his model, as I said, is based on a set of structural stages that are pre-personal, like infant development, when you address all of our subconscious motivation, and then the personal adult development, where we are aware of our conscious processing of the things that we do, and then the transpersonal, which for him is the higher state, when we start integrating spiritual and mystical experiences. So, and his whole model is based on the AQAL, which is the all quadrant, all levels, and based on 4 principal concepts: the quadrants, stages of level, lines of streams, states and of development. So, and the 5th one is a rest category, because the main concepts could not address certain things like feminism, masculinity, the 9 enneagrams, and Jungian archetypes. He couldn't find a place to put in the 4 concepts, so he created a rest category that he called types, where he addresses those things. So, and the quadrants. Before we go to the quadrants, it's important to understand Wilber. It's important to understand the concept of the Holland. Holland is a philosophical concept that Wilber borrowed from philosophy, which basically means that every entity and concept is both an entity on its own and a hierarchical part of a larger whole. So I want you to really pay attention to the word hierarchy, because as I start contrasting those scholars in integral education, there are a few things that make them disagree among themselves. And you will see when I talk a little bit about Ferrer, because the hierarchy part is the part that didn't work for him. So if you take a body cell, for example, the body cell is a whole organ or organism that is living by itself, but it's also a smaller part of a larger body. So you can have the idea of a hierarchy there. And based on that notion of the Holland, he decided to look at reality from multiple perspectives. How can we look at human experience from multiple perspectives, which means he wanted to summarize Western and Eastern theories and models in a way that will be so integral that can explain all of human experience. That's why some people started disagreeing with him. So he created the quadrants, and then the upper left, where he talks about the I. So there's a way to look at human experience from the interior, from the inside, because it's intentional. And he mentioned quickly Freud psychoanalysis that studied the behavior from the personal experience, the interior. And then the opposite of the I is the it, which from the Skinner behavioral perspective, the personal experience is looked at as an object that can be studied neutrally, objectively. Again, we understand that in the West, right? So, and then he moves to the collective inner, we, the Gadamer hermeneutic, where you can explain a collective experience based on a cultural worldview. And then it looks now at the whole society from a neutral third-person perspective, which is a little bit of a Marxist, looking at how society, system treats a collection of people. So, and he said, this model, you can use it and understand almost any human experience anywhere in the world. So that was interesting. So he talks quickly about, these are quickly his different stages, which are, the first stage are like pre-personal, personal, and transpersonal. We talked about it. The lines, the lines of development. He talks about how people can develop different lines at different stages. Like I can be cognitively more developed than somebody who's affectively less developed. Like I had a female friend who was like, every day you always in your head, you're too cognitive. Why don't you meet me in the feeling? I was, maybe I'm still not developing the feeling affective, so I'm very well developed there. Which is weird, because as an African, intelligence actually comes from the heart. So I'm supposed to actually be more developed affectively. So, and then it moves to the state and type. So I will move quickly because my time is really going quick there. That summary, for some of you who want more of this, I can send you the link if you write your emails. I'm not going to spend too much time there, but I just want you to see that from Aurobindo, you have the outer being, the inner being, and the psychic being. And then you have especially the higher mind, middle mind, intuition, upper mind, and then the super mind, where you become a Gnostic mind, right? So, and the first three stages of Aurobindo are formation and evolution of the individual, and the third last are more of transformation and integration. So it's ascending and descending, and I will talk about that later. Now you have Jorge Ferrer's model, which is participatory, where he disagrees with Wilber, saying that experiences are not hierarchical, saying that because you're non-dual, you're higher than me because I'm dual. So, but we need to be more of a participatory way of accepting each other to open dialogue. So, and he said that spiritual experiences must be seen as spiritual events, or like a sea with multiple shores, and we can measure our as a spiritual experience by the values that we hold. So now you see that Ferrer's model basically is a transition between Aurobindo and Wilber's integral model and the African model. And to understand the African model, it's important to understand the African integral worldview. What are the components, or modalities of a human being? And that goes way back to ancient Egypt. And there are even studies that are trying to look at it from the perspective of beyond ancient Egypt. So as you see, African scholars are really becoming very, very much interested in finding the truth from their own perspective, not only regurgitating what has been said about them. Because what is now in the books is everything started in Egypt, right, in ancient Egypt. But studies now are trying to look beyond that. But I'm going to limit myself to ancient Egypt for now, for the sake of this conversation. So in ancient Egypt, human beings had many, many, many components. But I'm just going to talk about three that are very essential. Like there was the car that was kind of like an individualized cosmic being. Like the way you are as a human being, you are a miniature of the universe, right? So, and if you want to understand the car from a more biological perspective, then we can say from a Western parlance that the car is a psycho-affective and psycho-cognitive aspect of human beings. And now they also talk about the bar, which is kind of understood as a moving capability that human beings have to move out of their body, independently. So, and we'll talk about that when we go to the next scholar. So, and if you want to understand it from another angle, from a Western parlance, you can also look at the bar as blood, as race, as family, as character, and then the sad, which is simply the living body. And all of these have an immortal and mortal characteristics. So, and they coexist peacefully, not like the Freudian eros and thanatos that are always conflictual. And you see how the Western model always kind of focuses on the conflicts that explain the problem, as opposed to the African model that focuses more on the harmony. Because those components are harmoniously living, and the harmonious life creates an energy that affects the body. And that you can understand psychosomatic problems. So now we have the next author, which you see the names of the author at the bottom. As we move from ancient, Egypt to modern Africa, and this is a very, very prominent Cameroonian researcher in anthropology who studied all of African cultures and came with some of the things that were very revealing to him. The breath, which is the whole person as a living entity and energy. So it's not breathing. It's not saying that the breath that he's talking about is breathing. It's just that entity that gives us the impression of feeling, seeing, perceiving life by our senses. You know, it's a living entity and energy. So it will get more complex as we go down. So, and then you move on to the shadow, you know, which is the mobile, you know, person that goes beyond time and space. So it has what he called the inner shadow and the shadow proper. So, and the inner shadow is the abstract signified of material shadow allowing a person to escape gravity. If you look at your shadow, you can see that the shadow can escape gravity, right? So, and that will explain a lot of phenomena such as witchcraft, hexing, and all that are very important in Africa. So, and then he also talks about the body. But he insists that there's an element that is also important, which is the heart as the seat of knowledge and intelligence. So, and now we go to the next author who talks about spiritual principles, you know, that are kind of like the role of our ancestor in our life. Because remember that from an African perspective, the ancestors are the glue that hold the community together. Because when we talk about collectivity, community living, it doesn't come out of the blue. It's not an abstract thing. There's something that holds that system together. It is the ancestors. Because whatever I do here, my mind is operating in Africa, and I'm in sync with that. And there's something that connects me there all the time. So, and he talks about the vital principles. In Africa, everything has a life. A rock, grass, human being, everything has life and should be honored. I'm not going to go in detail, but in the questions I might develop a little bit more. And then the body. So, and from the Congo area, we have also the Muntu, who is the human being who is sacred at birth. And I can go deeper when we have the conversation, what it means to be born sacred as a human being. And Ariska touched a little bit on that. And then the Ubuntu, you know, who is the human being who is always unfolding. What you have to understand is, from an African perspective, human beings are constantly becoming while integrating an orderly universe. It's about order, justice, and harmony. That's what it is. We're never completely fully built and formed. We're constantly becoming. And then you have the notion of Kalunga, what is reality. So, and now we have the two triptychs that explain the African worldview. So the first one, for example, is the ontogenic axis, which is the individual in its biology, in its individualized experience and feelings and restricted family and all of those values. And then you have the vertical axis. It is the relationship that the ontogenic individual entertains with his ancestor, his ancestry. So it's always, am I at peace with my forefathers? That is crucial metrics. And then you have the horizontal axis. Am I at peace with my fellow human beings? You know, people who are with me, like Arisika said, if Descartes said, I think therefore I am, Africa is, I think because we are. So that's really crucial thing to remember. So, and then you understand a little bit that worldview. So then we have another triptych, which is more about an African worldview, which is microcosmic, us, with our feelings, our cries, our sorrows, our work, dating, and you know, birth, and all of these things that make us live. This realm, the microcosmos, and then we have the mesocosmos, which is now the realm of the spirit, the ancestor, and all of these people. And then you have the realm of the all synchronizing, synthesizing, ultimate divine. So now all of these are not hierarchical. They are interactive, they are one, but they're just dimensional. So I interact with my ancestor all the time and my family all the time. So that's how it's to understand that. And ultimately it's about balance. The goal is to achieve balance. Because as you see this thing, you understand we're talking about the ontogenic being here, who is in interaction with the closest family here, and interaction with the community, the society, and the whole universe. And it is very cyclical, because we believe, you know, from ancient Egypt, where we look at the movement of the sun, being born at dawn and resting at dusk. And if you know the book of the 12 hours, you know how we study every hour of the night to see the position of the body and all that, and the journey of the sun, to understand what our lives actually mean after we're out of this envelope. So you can understand that dynamic interaction. So I'm going to go quicker. And then to conclude, because the monitor is like, to conclude, what I want you to take away here, for example, Aurobindo integral model. The goal here is that integration and transformation lead to connection with the higher self, the divine, the truth, the pure consciousness. Because all of these things, the first three stages, physical, vital, mental, is ascending, as you can see in the method, is ascending. So even it's well known in the West. It's how you educate the child, how you educate society. You know, you have that physical aspect of your little hygiene and all that, how you carry your physical and blah, blah. And then you have the vital, where you begin now to, interact with society and everything. And then you have the mental, when you started mentalizing things, processing information and things. So this is kind of ascending, because they go this way and grow. But then when you get to the second half, which is psychic and spiritual, it's actually descending. Because once you get to the supermind, where you are now a Gnostic man, and you become one with consciousness, that consciousness now descend to permeate all of the levels, from spiritual, psychic, mental, vital to physical. So this is where actually transformation and integration happens, which we don't really explain to students in this school, because they just say, write a paper about how you transform. I never knew what to write. But they don't actually explain that is what I mean. How do you integrate those things? So, and you have then the ascending and the descending. And then the Wilberian thing, the goal is a little bit similar, to be one with God, with the divine union, non-dual. There's no other thing. I am consciousness itself, And then you have the Wilberian method is hierarchical and non-dual. I would say you integrate all stages and level as you grow up, and you become the absolute all God. And everybody is that still like Christian, whatever, dualism, they're not even close to you. So that becomes a problem. And that's where Ferrer's model is more of transformation, is co-creation. Ferrer said, no, there aren't really levels of state or hierarchy in anything. Everybody's experience, look at it as you go to a party, everybody is at the party is the event. But everybody in that party has their own experience. And all those experiences must be taken into account and be valid. So we are co-creating the party, so we are co-creating the experience. It's very participatory as a method. We construct it, and it's concurrent. It happened at an individual level. It also happened at the community level as we co-create that. The principle of transformation and integration actually lead to peace, balance, and harmony. Am I at peace with my ascending acts, ancestry? Am I at peace with my horizontal acts? The community, the people who are me, who gives me reason for being. Am I at peace with myself? That's what integration, from my perspective. And it's very cyclical. Because I thought Aristotle was going to talk about that maybe in the panel, where African talks about the not yet born, the living, and the living dead. These things are very cyclical. So, and we can talk more about that. And for bonus and conclude this, you can read what I said there. You know, so from a Western perspective in psychotherapy, emotional maturity in the West is understood as independence of the subject. I'm an independent person. I don't rely on my parent anymore or society. I work hard. You know, like we're talking about the purpose of our life from the Aurobindonian thing. Is it to be born, work hard, or go to school, work hard, get married, buy a car, buy a house, eat, drink, and then die, and that's it? Or is there more? So you can see how maturity is about having that. In Africa, it's about, am I articulated enough with all of my axes? You know, making the patient autonomous in the West. I'm self-reliant. In Africa, am I in harmony with all the dimensions of my existence? Thanks.